Hello, everyone. Today we will talk about the elements of a theory in management research. A theory is a tool that helps us understand and explain complex phenomena in organizations. In this session, we will see what makes a strong theory, why is it so important for research. Let's now think about why theories are important. Theories are important because they help us organize very complex real world phenomena in a simple and understandable way. They help us communicate our findings clearly to others. Most importantly, theories go beyond describing what happens. They answer the questions of how, when, why something happens, which gives us deeper insights and predictive power. According to Stinchcomb, 1968, Kurlinger and Lee, 2000, theories are tentative and must be tested through research. We will use the example of resource dependency theory, a classic framework introduced by Pfeffer and Selanik, 1978, as our running example. So, dependence theory doesn't merely describe that firms rely on external resources. It explains how they manage dependence through actions like mergers or board interlocks. When these responses or actions are triggered, and why power imbalances shape the strategic behavior of the firm. For more understanding, please refer to Pfeffer and Selanik 1978 and Hillman, Withers and Collins 2009. Let's think about an example from the field of construction. Let's take it as a metaphor. This metaphor has been borrowed from Cronin, Sutton, and Van Kippenberg 2021. Let's think about a construction site where they have multiple bricks and there is a blueprint on how to construct a building or an edifice. So the bricks are facts, the edifice as a codified body of knowledge which can be constructed by the builder or scientific researcher using the blueprint called theory or explanation. The bricks alone do not make a house. Facts alone do not make a theory. A true theory explains how and why those bricks fit together in a coherent structure. Without the blueprint or a causal logic, we have description, not theory. So, if you see this picture, these bricks are facts. The blueprint is the causal logic or explanation or a theory behind why and how it has to be arranged. And this edifies is the codified body of knowledge. Now, if you do not have a blueprint or a theory, the facts are just there, and then it becomes an unorganized structure of knowledge which we cannot retrieve or use to make decisions. So, when we talk about theory, it's just as important to be clear on what it is not. So, in their 1995 article published in Administrative Science Quarterly, Sutton and Straw explained that although reviewers, editors, and audiences may hold differing beliefs on what constitutes a theory, there is general agreement on what does not qualify as a theory. So, theory is not just a pile of references. Theory is not just random data or data points. As Sutton and Straw emphasize, these are raw materials, but without causal reasoning, They are not theory. Second, theory is not just a list of constructs or variables. No, it's not. Listing out demographic characteristics or conceptual definitions is not theory. There has to be a theoretical argument made of the way of why there is a causal relationship between these constructs or variables. Third, the use of diagrams or hypothesis or predictions is not theory. Figures and predictions are useful, but they must be grounded in an explanatory story about why those relationships exist. Finally, theory is not merely a description. As Bacharach 1989 and Wetton 1989 points out, the goal is to answer how and why, not just what. Aquinas and Cronin, in their 2022 article, reminded us that a good theory always includes the word because. Just so, going back to our metaphor, just as bricks alone do not make a house, facts like data points or alone do not make a theory. A true theory explains how and why those bricks fit together into a coherent structure. Without the blueprint or causal logic, we just have description and not theory. In the context of our example, the resource dependence theory, listing all the firm's suppliers, customers, regulators is not theory. These could be these just the variables. Theory emerges when we explain how power of these actors influences the strategic decisions of the firm, such as board interlocks or alliances, and why some firms can perform better or manage these dependencies better than others. Let's now think about some of the important aspects of a good theory. So, reality is messy and overloaded with details, and theories help us simplify, right? Like theories have these um, simplification part of the complex reality. Um, Theories help us simplify by making assumptions that focus attention on what is essential and ignoring what's peripheral. As Bettis 2014 notes, reality is too complex to fully capture, so we must strip it down to essential elements. Simplification can be achieved through assumptions, like which acts like the foundation of theory. They make phenomena manageable to study. For example, in microeconomics, we assume that there is profit maximization, which means the firms aim to maximize the profit, while behavioral theory assumes that there is bounded rationality. In resource dependence theory, going back to our example, Pfeffer and Selanik, 1978, start from two key assumptions. Like they say that these two key assumptions are central for this theory. First, the organizations are not self-sufficient. So this is their core assumption. They rely on their environment. These organizations rely on their environment for critical resources such as capital, raw materials, and legitimacy. The second assumption is that whoever controls these resources holds power, and therefore they are creating dependencies. These simplifying assumptions, these two simplifying assumptions, make it possible to ask precise research questions such as how does the degree of resource dependence influence the formation of strategic alliances? And to generate testable propositions that are both meaningful and parsimonious. Another aspect of good theory is having system of constructs and propositions. But remember again, just system of constructs and propositions do not qualify it to be a theory. There has to be a explanation, a causal logic connecting these systems and propositions. But some constructs and propositions help us get towards the strong theory. A strong theory isn't just a list of ideas, it's an integrated system. As Seth and Zinkan 1991 describes, a theory systematically relates statements and generalizations in a way that can be empirically tested. Kurlinger 1964 reminds us that these statements connect to well-defined constructs. The abstract ideas like resource dependence or power asymmetry into propositions that predict relationships. According to Sadby 2010, constructs are conceptual abstractions of phenomena not directly absorbed. Bacharach 1989 points out that constructs are linked to propositions specifying relationships among variables. In terms of our example, the resource dependence theory, key constructs include extent of dependence on external actors, the asymmetry in control over critical resources, and the strategies organizations use to manage that dependence. From these constructs, we can form propositions, like the ideas that greater dependence on a single resource suppliers increases the supplier's bargaining power, which in turn prompts the dependent organization to pursue actions such as joint ventures, acquisitions, or political lobbying. So, again, a system of theory has a system of constructs or propositions or variables, but only system of constructs and propositions do not constitute a theory, right? The causal logic of why and an explanation of why these variables relate to form to explain why what happens is essential for an important for good theory. As we discussed before, propositions alone are not enough. We also need causal logic on mechanisms. Uh, so hypotheses and propositions are not just enough. Um, the causal glue, the logical reasoning that explains why one variable influences other. Witten calls this as theoretical glue, and Shepard and Sadby, in their article 2016, called these causal mechanisms as cogs in the wheels of the theory. In terms of our example, the resource dependence theory, the causal mechanism is straightforward yet powerful. When an external actor controls a resource critical to the firm's operations, this particular firm becomes dependent on the external actor. This dependence creates power imbalance, which in turn can influence the strategic choices of the firm. This our focal firm might respond by diversifying suppliers or integrating vertically, forming coalitions, or engaging into political activities. So, in this theory, by spelling out this causal chain, resource dependence theory not only predicts the outcomes but also explain the process that leads to them. So, by laying this cause and effect chain, resource dependence theory is just one example of how theory can show both the results we might expect and the steps that lead to them. In summary, strong theories have these core elements: simplifying assumptions, causal logic and mechanisms, systems of constructs and propositions that are connected by explanations, boundary conditions. Uh, for instance, boundary conditions are the temporal and contextual factors that limit generalizability of a theory. These boundary conditions specify who, where, and when, according to Witten 1989. For instance, in our example, resource dependency theory, uh, this particular theory is most applicable when organizations face high uncertainty and significant dependence on external entities such as regulated industries or volatile supply chains. According to Hillman, Weathers, and Collins, 2009, these the resource dependencies of the firm are most relevant in the context of high environmental uncertainty and where there is a strong resource interdependence. Um, Now, these are the boundary conditions where resource dependency theory is applicable. Um, Another aspect is theories has to be testable and falsifiable. Finally, theories have to be generative, meaning that be they have to be opening the doors to new questions, new insights, and new research directions. So these are some of the elements of strong theory. These are the references that I have used for this description. Thank you.